The ransomware hit global maritime at 3:17 a.m. on February 7, 2025. I was already at my desk, coffee growing cold, watching the attack patterns cascade across my monitors like digital rain. Friday morning, but hackers don't respect weekends or sleep schedules. "Nathan, you beautiful bastard, tell me you've got something," came Jerry Martinez's voice through my headset. CEO of a shipping empire worth $2 billion, reduced to begging a cybersecurity consultant in Cleveland. My fingers moved across 3 keyboards simultaneously, isolating the infected nodes. "Give me 30 seconds to trace the payload source." The code was elegant, I had to admit. Eastern European signatures, probably Romanian. Professional work, not some basement script kiddie. 30 seconds? "Nathan, they're asking for 12 million in Bitcoin. My insurance won't." Done. I executed the counterstrike, watching their encryption keys dissolve into worthless data fragments. "Check your systems. You're clean." Silence. Then, "How the hell did you—" "Because I think like they do." I leaned back in my Herman Miller chair, surrounded by 6 monitors that cast blue light across my home office walls. Through the smart glass, Cleveland's Shaker Heights spread out below, all pristine lawns and old money. "Wire transfer goes through as usual, Jerry. Same rates." "You just saved my company. Again." "That's what firewalls are for." I hung up and stretched, glancing at the Patek Philippe on my wrist. Lauren's anniversary gift last month. Custom encrypted face that displayed our shared calendar, stock portfolio, even the smart home's security status. Sentimental and practical, just like her. Speaking of Lauren, her office light was still on across the hall. Glass walls everywhere in our house. Transparency by design, or so I thought. I could see her animated on a video call, hands gesturing as she pitched some Fortune 500 campaign. At 43, she still commanded a room like she had when we met at that cybersecurity conference in 2006. I'd been the technical expert. She'd been the marketing director trying to translate my jargon into executive speak. Opposites that clicked. "Honey," her voice carried across the hallway 20 minutes later. "You done saving the world?" "Just finished. How's the Peterson Industries pitch going?" "Closed it. 7 figures." She appeared in my doorway, still in her power suit, strawberry blonde hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. "Celebration dinner tomorrow? It's been too long since we had a proper date night." I pulled her onto my lap, breathing in her perfume, something expensive and French that she'd worn since our wedding day. "Remember our first anniversary? That rooftop place in Little Italy? When you proposed we skip the traditional gifts and invest in the house instead?" She laughed, settling against me. "Most romantic financial planning session ever. Hey, that down payment got us this place, and look how that turned out." I gestured at our glass-walled kingdom. Smart everything: lights, temperature, security, locks, all controlled by systems I'd designed myself. No kids to worry about, no distractions, just us building something bigger. Her phone buzzed against my leg. Unknown number. She glanced at it, then silenced the call without looking again. "Spam?" "Probably. You know how it is. Close a big deal. Suddenly everyone wants to be your friend." She kissed my forehead and stood. "I'm going to wind down with some wine. Join me?" "In a minute. Let me just run the weekly vulnerability scan on our home network." My husband, the eternal paranoid. But she said it with affection. "Don't stay up all night chasing ghosts, Nathan. Some things are actually secure." I watched her walk away, then turned back to my screens. The scan showed green across the board. No unauthorized devices, no suspicious traffic, all access points locked down tight. Our digital life was a fortress. But something nagged at me about that phone call. The area code looked familiar. Saturday morning started with Lauren burning pancakes and laughing about it. I can close million-dollar deals but apparently can't flip breakfast food. It's the multitasking, I said, scraping carbon off the smoke detector. Your brain's already in campaign mode. Speaking of which, I've got that client emergency later. Rain check on our celebration dinner? I paused, spatula halfway to the trash. Emergency? On Saturday? Peterson Industries wants to move fast on the campaign launch. Their CMO is flying in from Seattle, only available today. She shrugged, already checking her phone. You know how these corporate types are. Everything's urgent until it isn't. Right. I'd dealt with enough executives to know the drill. Need me to drive you? Traffic's murder downtown on weekends. Thanks, but I'll take my car. Meetings at that boutique hotel near the Flats. Easier to park. The Flats. Trendy warehouse district. Lots of converted lofts and overpriced restaurants. Perfect place for impressing out-of-town clients. Still, something felt off about the whole thing. What time should I expect you back? Late, probably. You know how these dinner meetings drag on. Another buzz from her phone. Same unknown number as last night. She declined it again, faster this time. Popular spam caller. They're persistent, I'll give them that. She grabbed her keys and laptop bag. Don't wait up if I'm really late, okay? These West Coast types like to party. After she left, I did what any reasonable cybersecurity expert would do. I ran a deeper scan on our shared devices. Call history, text logs, cloud backups. All standard stuff, nothing invasive. Just routine maintenance. The unknown number had called her 6 times in the past week. Always declined, no voicemails. I ran the digits through my professional databases. Nothing suspicious. Clean number, no red flags, but my instincts were humming. 18 years in cybersecurity teaches you that patterns mean everything. Random calls don't persist without reason. And the timing bothered me. Why start calling now, right after Lauren's biggest deal in months? I grabbed my laptop and headed to the kitchen for more coffee. The smart home's activity log showed Lauren had reset the garage door code yesterday. Odd, since we'd just updated it last month. She'd also accessed the guest bedroom's climate controls, the room we never used except for storing Lauren's old marketing materials. Probably nothing. But in my line of work, probably nothing was usually something. I decided to take a drive. The boutique hotel near the Flats was easy enough to find. Upscale place with valet parking and the kind of modern art that cost more than most people's cars. Lauren's BMW wasn't in the lot, but that didn't mean much. Valet could have moved it, or she might have parked on the street. I was about to leave when I saw her coming out of the elevator. Not alone. The man with her was tall, dark-haired, maybe late 30s. Expensive suit, confident smile. They weren't touching, but there was something about their body language that made my chest tighten. Too familiar. Too comfortable. They hugged goodbye in the lobby. Nothing inappropriate, just a professional embrace that lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. Then Lauren headed to the valet stand while the man walked toward the bar. I waited until Lauren's car disappeared into traffic before approaching the valet. Excuse me, I think my business partner just left. Tall guy, dark hair, gray suit. Oh, Mr. Chen? Yeah, he headed to the bar. Room 417 if you need to catch him later. Chen. I filed that away. Sunday evening, Lauren seemed different. More attentive than she'd been in months. More interested in what I was doing. She even asked about my weekend work schedule, which she usually avoided. "Just curious," she said when I raised an eyebrow. "We've been ships passing lately. Maybe I could rearrange some client calls, spend more time together." That would be nice. And it would have been, if I believed it. Monday morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called in a favor from Danny Wu, a private investigator who specialized in corporate espionage cases. We'd worked together on several data theft investigations over the years. "Nathan Kellner, didn't expect to hear from you on a personal line. I need a consultation, Danny. Confidential. The kind of consultation that involves tracking devices and surveillance photos, or the kind that involves marriage counselors and therapy?" "The first kind." Silence. Then, "Meet me at that coffee shop on Cedar. 1 hour." Danny was already at a corner table when I arrived, looking like every private investigator cliché. Rumpled coat, sharp eyes, and the kind of face that forgot. He slid a tablet across the table without preamble. "Show me what you've got." I walked him through the phone calls, the changed codes, the hotel meeting. When I mentioned the name Chen, Danny's expression shifted. "Blake Chen?" My blood went cold. "You know him. Freelance marketing consultant. Operates out of those co-working spaces downtown. Has a reputation for aggressive client acquisition." "What kind of reputation?" Danny pulled up a file on his tablet. 3 divorce cases in the last 2 years where his name came up. Always the same pattern. Married women in marketing or PR looking to expand their business networks. Chen specializes in helping them leverage personal relationships for professional growth. The coffee in my mouth turned bitter. "Are you telling me he's a professional homewrecker?" "I'm telling you he's a predator who targets successful women in vulnerable positions. Your wife just landed a big contract, right? Feeling confident, maybe looking for new opportunities?" I stared at Blake Chen's photo. Handsome in a generic way, the kind of smile that belonged on LinkedIn profiles and corporate websites. "How long does he usually take to close the deal?" "Depends on the target. Could be weeks, could be months. He's patient." "And you can prove this?" "For the right fee, I can prove a lot of things." Danny closed the tablet. "Question is, what do you want me to find?" I thought about Lauren's changed behavior, the declined calls, the mysterious hotel meeting. About 18 years of marriage built on trust and shared ambition. About the smart home we'd designed together, with all its sensors and cameras and careful security. "Everything," I said. "Find me everything." 3 days later, Danny delivered. Photos of Lauren and Blake at 4 different restaurants over the past month. Credit card records showing payments to hotels I'd never heard of. Phone logs revealing a pattern of calls that coincided perfectly with Lauren's client dinners. But the worst part was the audio. Danny had managed to get close enough during one of their coffee meetings to capture 20 minutes of conversation. Lauren's voice, talking about how exciting it was to feel wanted again. Blake's practiced responses, all the right words at the right moments. "It's not about the physical stuff," Lauren was saying. "It's about feeling seen, you know? Nathan's so focused on his screens and his codes. Sometimes I wonder if he'd notice if I disappeared entirely." "You deserve someone who appreciates what you bring to the table," Blake replied. "Your vision, your drive. That Peterson Industries deal, that was all you. You did that." Nathan thinks success just happens, like it's some algorithm you can debug. He doesn't understand the human element. I stopped the recording. I'd heard enough. That evening, I sat in my office staring at the evidence spread across my monitors. Photos, phone logs, credit card statements, hotel receipts, a complete digital trail of my wife's betrayal, documented with the same precision I use to track cybercriminals. The smart home security system showed Lauren pulling into the garage. Her car door slammed, then her heels clicked across the hardwood floors. "Nathan, I'm home." "In the office," I called back. She appeared in the doorway, still in her power suit, still beautiful, still lying to me. "How was your day?" I asked. "Good, productive. Had lunch with potential new client downtown." She leaned against the doorframe, casual as anything. "How about you? Any interesting hacks to report?" "Actually, yes. Found something pretty sophisticated today. Want to see?" Lauren approached my desk, looking over my shoulder at the main monitor. I'd prepared a slideshow, not of ransomware or corporate espionage, but of her. The first photo showed her and Blake at that restaurant in the Flats. The second was a close-up of them holding hands across a table at some upscale wine bar. The third was Blake kissing her cheek outside a hotel elevator. Lauren went rigid behind me. "Recognize the security vulnerability?" I asked conversationally. Her silence stretched for 30 seconds. Then, "Nathan, I can explain." "No need. The data speaks for itself." I clicked to the next slide. Phone records, call duration, frequency analysis. Pattern recognition is kind of my thing, Lauren. Once I knew what to look for, the rest was just forensics. It's not what you think." I turned in my chair to face her. She'd gone pale, but her chin was still raised, still defiant. "What I think is that Blake Chen has called you 47 times in the past month. What I think is that you've charged 8 hotel visits to credit cards I don't have access to. What I think is that you've been lying to me for weeks. Nathan, please. What I know is that you've been compromised. Your security protocols have failed, and the whole system is at risk." Lauren's composure cracked. "Stop talking about me like I'm one of your computer networks." "Why? Isn't that what this is? A breach of trust, unauthorized access, malicious code introduced into a previously secure system?" I stood up, facing her across the desk. "The only question is whether this is repairable or if the whole thing needs to be wiped clean. Nathan, listen to me. Blake is he's helping me with some business development, networking stuff. Nothing physical has happened." I played the audio file Danny had captured. Lauren's voice filled the room, talking about feeling unseen, about Blake appreciating her. Her face crumpled as she heard her own words. "Networking," I repeated when the recording ended. "Okay, it's complicated. Yes, there are feelings involved, but I haven't crossed any lines, Nathan. I haven't what? Haven't had sex with him yet?" The word hung in the air between us. Lauren flinched like I'd slapped her. "It's not about sex. It's about connection, about feeling alive again. And I make you feel dead. You make me feel invisible." The words exploded out of her. "When's the last time you looked up from those screens long enough to really see me? When's the last time we talked about anything except security updates and portfolio performance? When's the last time you told me the truth about where you were spending your evenings?" She had no answer for that. I walked around the desk, closing the distance between us. "Here's what's going to happen, Lauren. You're going to end whatever this is with Blake Chen. Tonight. You're going to block his number, delete his contact information, and never speak to him again. Nathan, I'm not finished. You're going to move into the guest bedroom while I decide whether this marriage is salvageable. You're going to give me complete access to all your devices, all your accounts, all your communications. And you're going to pray that I don't decide to make Blake Chen's predatory behavior public knowledge. You can't just, I can do whatever I want, Lauren. I have 18 years of joint assets, shared property, and business connections. I know every password, every account number, every financial instrument we've ever touched. Right now, you have exactly as much power in this relationship as I decide to give you. Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. The emotion had been burned out of me the moment I saw those first photos. Is this really how you want to handle this? Like some corporate hostile takeover? You made it corporate the moment you started lying to me. I returned to my desk, fingers already moving across the keyboard. Now get out of my office. I have some security updates to implement. Lauren stood there for another moment, then turned and walked away. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard the guest bedroom door close. Then I got to work. The first thing I did was change every password in our digital ecosystem. Banking, investments, credit cards, smart home controls, cloud storage, everything. Lauren would wake up tomorrow locked out of her own life until I decided otherwise. The second thing I did was call Danny Wu. It's Nathan. I need the full package on Blake Chen. Financial records, business history, client list, personal background, everything you can legally obtain. This is moving pretty fast, Nathan. You sure you don't want to try counseling first? The relationship is beyond repair. Now I need to assess the full extent of the damage and plan my response. All right, give me 48 hours. I hung up and stared at the monitors surrounding me. 18 years of marriage reduced to data points and evidence files. But that's what Lauren had done when she chose Blake Chen over our life together. She'd treated our marriage like just another business transaction, something to be optimized or discarded based on current market conditions. If she wanted to play it like business, I'd show her how that game was really played. The next morning, Lauren tried to access our joint checking account to pay for her morning coffee and discovered that her card had been deactivated. She tried logging into our shared cloud storage to review her client presentations and found herself locked out. She attempted to adjust the house's temperature from her phone app and got an unauthorized user error message. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when she stormed downstairs. Nathan, what the hell? I can't access anything. Security protocol, I said, without looking up from my eggs. When a system has been compromised, you isolate and contain until you can assess the full damage. I need my files for the client presentation this morning. Your personal device has been quarantined. I'll need to verify that Blake Chen hasn't had access to any confidential information before I can restore your privileges. Lauren stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're treating me like a computer virus. If the metaphor fits. I slid eggs onto a plate and sat down at the breakfast bar. Coffee's fresh. Help yourself. She grabbed a mug with shaking hands. Nathan, this is crazy. We need to talk about this like adults. We did talk. Last night. You admitted to an emotional affair with Blake Chen. Now I'm implementing appropriate safeguards. Safeguards against what? I told you nothing physical happened. Yet. I took a bite of eggs, letting the word hang in the air. But Blake Chen's track record suggests that's just a matter of time. Lauren's face went white. What do you mean, track record? Blake Chen, 38, divorced twice, freelance marketing consultant specializing in relationship-based business development. 3 previous affairs with married clients, 2 of which ended in divorce proceedings where his communications were subpoenaed as evidence. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed her Danny's preliminary report. Photos of Blake with other women, court documents from previous divorce cases, a pattern of behavior going back 5 years. Pattern recognition, Lauren. It's what I do for a living. She sank onto a bar stool, staring at the photos. He said he'd never been involved with a client before, that what we had was special. He said that to Jennifer Sargent in 2022 and to Sarah Kim in 2023, probably to others we haven't identified yet. Lauren put her head in her hands. Oh God, I'm such an idiot. You're a mark, I corrected. A successful, unhappy woman looking for validation. Blake Chen specializes in finding women exactly like you. Stop, please. But I wasn't done. I pulled up Blake's social media profiles, showing Lauren the carefully crafted persona. The LinkedIn posts about authentic business relationships. The Instagram photos from expensive restaurants and hotels. The testimonials from grateful clients who'd all been divorced within months of working with him. He's not a marketing consultant, Lauren. He's a con artist, and you're just his latest target. Lauren was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay. But the larger part, the part that had spent 20 years learning to think like the criminals I hunted, remained cold and analytical. I need to warn the others, she said through her tears. The other women he's targeting. No. My voice was flat, final. You don't get to be the hero here, Lauren. You made choices. Now you live with the consequences. But if he's done this to other people, then they'll figure it out the same way I did, by recognizing the patterns and following the data. I finished my breakfast and put the plate in the dishwasher. I'm going to the office today. When I get back, I expect Blake Chen's contact information to be permanently deleted from all your devices. I also expect a written account of every interaction you've had with him, including dates, locations, and topics discussed. Nathan, those are my terms for beginning to discuss the possibility of repairing this marriage. If you're not willing to accept them, I suggest you start looking for an apartment. I left Lauren sitting at the breakfast bar and drove to my office, where I spent the day doing what I did best, hunting threats and neutralizing them before they could do more damage. But this time, the threat wasn't some foreign hacker or corporate spy. This time, it was my own wife's capacity for self-destruction. And I wasn't sure that was something that could be patched. Danny Wu called me that evening with a full report on Blake Chen's operation. It was worse than I'd imagined. He's not just targeting married women, Danny explained over the phone. He's specifically targeting women in marketing and PR firms, women with access to client lists and industry contacts. This isn't just about affairs, it's about business intelligence. I was in my home office, Lauren somewhere upstairs in the guest bedroom. The house felt different now, like a crime scene waiting to be processed. What kind of intelligence? Client strategies, budget information, competitive analysis. Blake uses the emotional relationships to gain access to confidential business information, then sells it to competing firms or uses it to poach clients directly. My hands stilled on the keyboard. Are you telling me Lauren might have compromised her client's proprietary information? I'm telling you that's Blake Chen's real business model. The affairs are just the delivery method. I thought about Lauren's recent success with Peterson Industries, the 7-figure deal she'd closed. The deal that had made her feel so confident, so attractive to Blake's predatory attention. How long would it take to verify whether Lauren shared confidential information? Depends on how much access you have to her work files and communications. I looked at the guest bedroom door, closed and silent. Lauren had followed my instructions. Blake's contact information was deleted, and she'd provided a written timeline of their interactions. But now I realized I'd been asking the wrong questions. I'll need to do a deeper dive into her work systems, I told Danny. Can you help with the legal framework? If she's compromised client data, there could be criminal liability. Nathan, slow down. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Once you start looking into business espionage, this stops being a marital problem and starts being a federal case. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, seeing a stranger's face looking back at me. Cold, calculating, merciless. Then I better make sure I do it right. After hanging up with Danny, I spent 3 hours analyzing Lauren's work computers, her client correspondence, her file access logs. What I found made me sick. Blake Chen had been methodical. Every lunch meeting with Lauren had been followed by detailed questions about her clients' budgets, their competitive strategies, their upcoming campaigns. She'd shared information freely, thinking she was impressing a potential business partner. Peterson Industries' campaign strategy was now in Blake's possession, along with their entire marketing budget breakdown. So were the confidential plans for 3 other major clients. I sat back in my chair, processing the implications. Lauren hadn't just betrayed our marriage, she'd betrayed her professional obligations, possibly committed crimes, and certainly opened herself up to massive legal liability. The smart thing would be to warn her, help her understand the magnitude of what she'd done, maybe even help her figure out damage control. Instead, I picked up my phone and called Peterson Industries' chief legal officer. Hi, Catherine. This is Nathan Kellner, Lauren Kellner's husband. I think we need to have a conversation about a potential security breach involving your recent marketing campaign. The call lasted 20 minutes. Catherine thanked me for bringing the matter to their attention and assured me that Peterson Industries would conduct a thorough investigation. I hung up and made 4 more calls, 1 to each of Lauren's other major clients. By morning, Lauren's phone would be ringing with furious executives demanding explanations. Her business would be in crisis mode, her reputation in ruins, her legal exposure potentially catastrophic. And Blake Chen? Blake Chen was about to discover what happened when you targeted the wife of someone who specialized in destroying digital predators. I opened a new browser window and began composing an anonymous tip to the Federal Trade Commission about Blake Chen's fraudulent business practices. Then I started gathering the evidence that would support criminal charges for business espionage and wire fraud. Lauren had wanted to feel alive again, wanted to feel the rush of danger and excitement. I was about to show her what real danger felt like. The next morning brought chaos. Lauren's phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m., Peterson Industries' legal team, demanding an immediate conference call. By 7:15, 2 more clients had called. By 8, Lauren was in full panic mode, pacing the kitchen in her robe, trying to manage multiple crisis conversations at once. I sat at the breakfast bar, drinking coffee and watching her world implode in real time. No, I didn't intentionally share confidential information, she was saying into her phone. I may have discussed general industry trends with a potential partner, but she looked at me helplessly as the person on the other end interrupted. Yes, I understand the seriousness of the situation. Yes, I'll provide a full accounting of all communications. No, I don't currently have legal representation, but… The call ended abruptly. Lauren stared at her phone, then at me. Nathan, what did you do? I protected our assets, I said calmly. When I discovered that you'd potentially compromised client confidentiality, I felt obligated to inform the affected parties. You called my clients? Directly? I called their legal departments. As a cybersecurity professional, I have a duty to report potential data breaches when I become aware of them. Lauren sank into a chair, her face pale. They're all threatening to sue me. Peterson Industries is talking about criminal charges. Then you should probably hire a lawyer. With what money? You've frozen all our accounts. I finished my coffee and stood up. That's a valid point. I'll transfer $50,000 to your personal checking account. That should cover immediate legal expenses. $50,000? Nathan, our legal bills could be what? $1 million? $2 million? I shrugged. Then you better hope Blake Chen has some good advice about managing legal liability. Lauren stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're destroying my life. I'm containing a security breach. There's a difference. Her phone rang again. She looked at the caller ID and her shoulders sagged. It's Blake, she said quietly. Interesting timing. Lauren answered on the third ring. Hello? I couldn't hear Blake's side of the conversation, but I could see Lauren's face changing as she listened. Confusion, then anger, then something that looked like horror. What do you mean, charges? She said. What investigation? More listening. Blake, slow down. You're saying the FBI? The call ended. Lauren stared at her phone, then at me. Someone reported Blake to the federal authorities for business espionage. His office was raided this morning. Really? That's terrible. Nathan, did I what? Report a known con artist who specializes in obtaining proprietary business information through fraudulent relationships? Of course I did. It's called civic duty. Lauren put her head in her hands. They found client information from my company on his computers. Private campaign strategies, budget breakdowns, everything. How unfortunate for both of you. Stop being so cold. This is my life we're talking about. I looked at her sitting there in her expensive robe in the kitchen of the house we'd built together, surrounded by the smart home technology I'd designed to keep us safe. She looked small and scared, and completely out of her depth. Good. Your life changed the moment you decided to prioritize Blake Chen's attention over our marriage, I said. Everything that's happening now is just the natural consequence of that decision. I never meant for it to go this far. Intent is irrelevant. Results are what matter. I grabbed my laptop bag and headed for the garage. I'll be at the office all day. Try not to compromise any more confidential information while I'm gone. I spent the day watching Lauren's professional world collapse from the comfort of my downtown office. News of Blake Chen's arrest hit the local business websites by noon. Federal charges for wire fraud, conspiracy, and violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The FBI's press release mentioned multiple victims and an ongoing investigation into corporate espionage activities. By 2 p.m., 3 of Lauren's clients had publicly terminated their contracts with her firm. By 4 p.m., the Ohio State Bar's Ethics Committee had opened an investigation into her potential violations of attorney-client privilege. Even though she wasn't a lawyer, her consulting agreements included strict confidentiality clauses that carried legal weight. By 5 p.m., Lauren's business partners were demanding her resignation. I received updates throughout the day from various sources: Danny Wu, who was monitoring the legal proceedings; Catherine from Peterson Industries, who kept me informed about their internal investigation; and even a call from a reporter at Cleveland Business Journal asking for comment about the Blake Chen scandal and its impact on local marketing firms. I gave them a brief statement about the importance of cybersecurity awareness in professional relationships and suggested they contact the FBI for more details about the criminal investigation. When I got home that evening, Lauren was waiting for me in the living room. She'd changed out of her robe and was wearing one of her power suits, but she looked like she was dressed for her own funeral. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening." "My lawyer says I need to consider bankruptcy. The potential lawsuits could wipe out everything." I sat down across from her, maintaining careful distance. "What does your lawyer say about the criminal liability?" "That depends on whether the prosecution believes I knowingly participated in Blake's scheme or was just a victim of it." "And what do you believe?" Lauren was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I think I wanted to believe Blake was interested in me for me, not for what I could give him access to. I think I was so flattered by the attention that I ignored all the warning signs. The warning signs like him asking detailed questions about your client's proprietary information? Yes. The warning signs like him scheduling meetings right after you closed major deals? Yes. The warning signs like him being a known predator who'd done this exact thing to multiple other women? Lauren looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. How was I supposed to know about the other women? You weren't. That's what made you a perfect mark. The cruelty in my voice surprised even me, but I didn't take it back. Lauren flinched like I'd hit her. I know you hate me right now, she said. I know I've destroyed everything we built together. But Nathan, I'm scared. I'm really, really scared. For a moment, I almost softened. Almost remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with 18 years ago. The brilliant marketer who could charm anyone. The partner who'd helped me build a life better than anything I'd imagined possible. But then I thought about Blake Chen's hands on her face in that hotel lobby. I thought about the phone calls she'd declined while sitting on my lap. I thought about weeks of lies, weeks of betrayal, weeks of being made a fool of in my own home. You should be scared, I said. Your career is over. Your reputation is ruined. Your legal bills will bankrupt you. And the man you threw away 18 years of marriage for is going to spend the next decade in federal prison. Nathan, please. But here's the thing, Lauren. None of that is my problem anymore. I stood up and headed for the stairs. Where are you going? To pack. I've decided to file for divorce. I heard her sob behind me, a broken sound that might have moved me a week ago. Now it just sounded like background noise. I had more important things to focus on, like making sure Blake Chen's prosecution went smoothly and ensuring that Lauren's professional destruction was complete and irreversible. After all, I'd always been very thorough when it came to eliminating security threats. The divorce papers were filed on a Tuesday morning in March, 3 weeks after Blake Chen's arrest and 2 weeks after Lauren's business officially collapsed. I'd hired the best divorce attorney in Cleveland, Margaret Rothschild, who specialized in high-asset divorces and had never lost a case. This is the most comprehensive documentation of marital asset dissipation I've ever seen, Margaret told me during our initial consultation. Financial records, communications logs, business liability assessments. You've essentially built the case for me. I like to be thorough. Your wife hired David Goldman. He's good, but he's going to have a very difficult time arguing against this level of evidence. Lauren's legal strategy, as it turned out, was to claim that she'd been manipulated and victimized by Blake Chen, that her judgment had been compromised by emotional abuse, and that the destruction of her business was an unforeseeable consequence of his criminal behavior. It was actually a pretty good strategy, if you ignored the fact that I had recordings of her voluntarily sharing client information and expressing enthusiasm about her relationship with Blake. Margaret and I prepared our counter-argument methodically. Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, but that doesn't mean fault can't influence the division of assets. Lauren's reckless behavior had directly caused massive financial liability for both of us. Peterson Industries was seeking damages in excess of $2 million, and 3 other clients were preparing similar lawsuits. More importantly, Lauren's compromised position made her unemployable in the marketing industry. She would need significant spousal support to maintain anything close to her previous lifestyle, support that would come directly from assets we'd built together over 18 years. I wasn't feeling particularly generous about sharing those assets with someone who'd try to destroy our life together. The mediation session took place on a rainy Thursday afternoon in April. Lauren looked terrible. She'd lost weight, her expensive clothes hung loose on her frame, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't been sleeping. David Goldman did his best to present her as a victim of sophisticated manipulation, but Margaret had come prepared with a timeline showing Lauren's active participation in compromising client confidentiality. Mrs. Kellner willingly shared proprietary information with Mr. Chen on 6 separate occasions, Margaret explained to the mediator. This wasn't passive victimization. This was active collaboration in activities that have exposed both parties to massive civil and potentially criminal liability. My client was emotionally manipulated by a known predator, Goldman countered. Mr. Chen specifically targeted her during a vulnerable period in her marriage. A vulnerable period created by her own choices, Margaret interrupted. Mrs. Kellner initiated contact with Mr. Chen, agreed to multiple private meetings, and continued the relationship despite having multiple opportunities to recognize the inappropriate nature of his requests for confidential information. The mediator, an elderly woman named Patricia Winters, looked back and forth between the attorneys, then at Lauren and me. Mr. Kellner, what are you seeking in terms of asset division? I leaned forward slightly. Given the massive liability created by my wife's actions, I believe I'm entitled to protection of my separate property and business interests. My cybersecurity firm represents 18 years of work and reputation that shouldn't be compromised by Mrs. Kellner's poor judgment. What about spousal support? Judge Winters asked. Mrs. Kellner's unemployable status is a direct result of her own choices. I don't believe I should be required to subsidize the consequences of her betrayal. Lauren spoke for the first time since the session began. Nathan, please. I know I made mistakes, but you're asking for everything. The house, the investments, the business assets. You want to leave me with nothing. I looked at her across the conference table. This woman I'd once loved more than anything, now reduced to begging for financial scraps. I'm asking for exactly what you left me with, Lauren. Nothing. That's not fair? Fair? I felt my careful composure slip for the first time. Was it fair when you decided Blake Chen was more interesting than our marriage? Was it fair when you shared our client's confidential information with a criminal? Was it fair when you lied to my face for weeks while you planned your exit strategy? I never planned to leave you. It was never about replacing our marriage. It was about replacing me. Everything else is just details. Judge Winters intervened before the argument could escalate further. I think we need a recess. Let's reconvene in 30 minutes. During the break, David Goldman cornered me in the hallway. Nathan, you're being unreasonable. Lauren made mistakes, but destroying her financially isn't going to fix your marriage. I'm not trying to fix our marriage, David. I'm trying to protect myself from the consequences of her actions. She's facing potential criminal charges. Her entire career is over. Don't you think that's punishment enough? I thought about Blake Chen, sitting in a federal detention facility awaiting trial. I thought about Lauren's clients, scrambling to contain the damage from compromised campaign strategies. I thought about the 18 years of trust and partnership that Lauren had traded for a few months of excitement. No, I said, I don't think it's nearly enough. When we reconvened, Judge Winters presented her preliminary recommendations. I would retain the house, my business, and the majority of our investment portfolio. Lauren would receive a modest settlement, enough to cover her immediate legal expenses and basic living costs for 2 years, but nowhere near enough to maintain her previous lifestyle. This seems disproportionately harsh, Goldman protested. This seems proportional to the liability Mrs. Kellner created, Margaret responded. Lauren signed the agreement without further argument. I think she knew she had no choice. Her legal position was hopeless, her reputation destroyed, her future prospects non-existent. As we left the building, she caught up with me in the parking lot. Nathan, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. I know you'll never forgive me. I know I've lost the right to ask for your understanding, but I want you to know that I loved you. I loved our life together. I got lost somewhere along the way. I finally turned to look at her. She was crying again, mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. You didn't get lost, Lauren. You made choices. Every step of the way, you chose Blake Chen over our marriage. You chose excitement over stability. You chose secrets over honesty. I chose wrong. I know that now. Yes, you did. And now you get to live with those choices. I got in my car and drove away, leaving Lauren standing alone in the rain. The divorce was finalized on May 15th, exactly 18 years and 7 months after our wedding day. I signed the papers in Margaret's office while Lauren signed hers with David Goldman across town. No final meeting, no last words, no dramatic confrontations. Just the quiet dissolution of what had once been the most important relationship in my life. Blake Chen was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to wire fraud and conspiracy charges. The prosecution noted that his cooperation in providing information about his victims had earned him a reduced sentence. Without that cooperation, he might have faced 15 years. Lauren was not charged criminally, but the civil lawsuits destroyed her financially. Peterson Industries eventually settled for $1.2 million, effectively wiping out the modest divorce settlement she'd received from me. 2 other clients pursued smaller judgments that left her filing for bankruptcy protection by the end of the year. I followed her downfall through public court records and occasional updates from Danny Wu, who'd maintained his investigative files on the Blake Chen case. Lauren moved to a small apartment in Lakewood, took a job at a regional marketing firm for about a quarter of what she'd been earning before, and gradually disappeared from Cleveland's business and social scenes. I could have felt sorry for her. Maybe I should have. But every time I was tempted towards sympathy, I remembered her voice on that recording, talking about feeling invisible in our marriage. I remembered the hotel photos, the secret phone calls, the weeks of lies delivered with perfect sincerity. I remembered that she'd made her choices with full awareness of what she was risking, and I'd simply ensured that those risks became reality. By summer, I'd settled into a new routine. The house in Shaker Heights was mine alone now, all 24 rooms of it. I'd updated the smart home systems, changed all the access codes, and implemented new security protocols that would have been overkill for anyone except someone who just spent 6 months learning exactly how vulnerable trust could make you. My business thrived. The Blake Chen case had generated significant media attention for cybersecurity firms, and my role in exposing his operation had brought in a dozen new clients. I was busier than ever, traveling constantly, building systems to protect other people from the kinds of threats that had destroyed my own marriage. On weekends, I dated. Nothing serious, nothing that required emotional investment or long-term planning. Just dinner and conversation with intelligent, successful women who weren't looking for anything more complicated than good company. It was exactly the kind of life Lauren had claimed to want. Freedom from emotional entanglements, professional success, the ability to make choices based on logic rather than sentiment. The irony wasn't lost on me. One evening in late July, I was working in my office when the smart home system chimed an unusual alert. Someone was at the front gate, not pressing the intercom, just standing there. I pulled up the security camera feed and saw Lauren. She looked even thinner than she had at the divorce proceedings, wearing jeans and a simple blouse instead of her usual power suits. Her car was a 10-year-old Honda, probably the best she could afford after the bankruptcy. She stood there for nearly 5 minutes, looking up at the house we'd built together. Then she got back in her car and drove away. I watched the security footage 3 times, analyzing her body language, trying to understand what she'd been thinking. Was she hoping to talk? Trying to work up the courage to ring the bell? Just saying goodbye to a life that no longer existed? I never found out. She didn't come back. In August, Danny Wu called with an update I hadn't requested. Thought you might want to know, Lauren's moved to Portland. Got a job with some small digital agency out there. Fresh start, I guess. Good for her. You sure you're okay with how all this played out? I mean, she paid a pretty heavy price for a few months of bad judgment. I thought about that question for a while after hanging up. Had the punishment fit the crime? Had I been fair, or had I simply been thorough in my revenge? But then I thought about trust, and how it was either absolute or meaningless. I thought about the 18 years Lauren and I had spent building something together, something she'd destroyed in pursuit of excitement and validation from a man who'd never cared about her at all. I thought about the choice between forgiveness and justice, between mercy and consequences. And I realized I was completely comfortable with the choice I'd made. Lauren had wanted to feel alive, wanted to experience the thrill of risk and deception. I'd simply ensured that the risk was real and the consequences were permanent. That seemed fair to me. On September 1st, exactly 6 months after filing for divorce, I deleted all the evidence files from my personal systems. The photos, the recordings, the financial documents, the timeline analyses, everything that documented Lauren's betrayal and my response to it. It was time to move on. I kept the lessons, though. Trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired through good intentions or counseling sessions. Betrayal was a choice, not a mistake, and choices had consequences that couldn't be undone through apologies or promises to do better. Most importantly, I'd learned that some problems couldn't be solved through compromise or forgiveness. Some threats to your security could only be neutralized through complete and permanent elimination. Blake Chen had taught Lauren that marriages were just business relationships that could be optimized or discarded based on better opportunities. Lauren had taught me that the same principle applied to divorce. I'd simply been more effective at applying it. As autumn settled over Cleveland, I found myself genuinely content for the first time in months. My business was growing. My personal life was uncomplicated, and my home was secure against all known threats. The smart house systems hummed quietly around me, monitoring and protecting, alerting me to any unusual activity or unexpected visitors. Motion sensors, cameras, encrypted communications, multi-factor authentication on every device. Perfect digital security, designed and implemented by someone who understood exactly how much damage could be done by trusting the wrong person. Lauren had been right about one thing. I did see life through the lens of networks and codes and security protocols, but she'd been wrong about that being a weakness. In the end, it had been my greatest strength. The network was secure. All vulnerabilities had been patched. All threats had been neutralized. And I was exactly where I'd always belonged, protected, isolated, and completely in control. The last time I heard Lauren's name was in December, when Margaret Rothschild called to inform me that the final civil lawsuit had been settled. Lauren's bankruptcy proceedings were complete, and all claims against marital assets had been resolved in my favor. "That closes the book on the whole situation," Margaret said. "Are you satisfied with the outcome?" I looked around my office, at the monitors displaying secure networks and protected systems, at the awards and certifications that marked 18 years of professional success. Through the smart glass windows, Cleveland sparkled in the winter snow, clean and pristine and perfectly ordered. "Yes," I said, "I'm satisfied." And I was. Lauren had wanted excitement, had wanted to feel something other than the careful stability we'd built together. Blake Chen had wanted to exploit successful women for professional gain. They'd both gotten exactly what they wanted in the end, just not in the way they'd expected. Networks don't lie, and code doesn't betray. Algorithms don't cheat, and security protocols don't develop feelings for someone else. Technology was honest in a way that people never could be. Lauren had called that a limitation. I'd learned to call it a feature. The best firewalls, after all, are the ones that keep everything dangerous outside where it belongs.